We often think creativity comes when we are free, full of time, talent, tools, money, VC funding. But what if our best ideas, they actually come when we are cornered, when we are pushed against a wall, when we are constrained? That is the topic of my talk today, Build Like You're Broke, the secret power of constraints. I am Abhishek Soni. A little bit about me. I'm a 2x founder. I have run out of cash more number of times than I've run out of ideas, and luckily so. I built lending, which, as some of you might appreciate and relate, is a business more scrutinized than an airport security line. I, along with my team, scaled, survived, and found a meaningful exit for this business. The business which we built was Upwards. It was acquired by a SME lending giant called Lending Cart in one of the top 10 acquisitions of 2023. Cumulatively, we would have raised north of 300 to 400 crores, only to realize that money doesn't buy peace or product market fit. I am an IIT Delhi graduate, but most of my learning has actually happened while building businesses. And now I'm telling stories because founders' cars, they make for great punchlines, and I'm hopefully able to deliver some today. Anyways, back to the main topic. So it's a common myth associated with startups that more money leads to more innovation. But you know that moment when your startup, your business has some 3,742 rupees left in your bank account, and you have your payroll due in the next 4 days, you have your bills due, you have your EMIs due. That's a moment of stress for sure. But that's also a moment of incredible clarity. Having been in the trenches enough number of times, having faced this near death experience enough number of times, first with a team of 5, then with a team of 50, then when we were larger, a team of 150, I think I can safely say that each time the clarity, it got sharper, and the creativity, it got bolder. Constraints, whether of money, time, tools, talent, they don't kill creativity, they trigger it. And let's go deeper into the Upwards story to understand this more. When in Upwards we raised our Series A, we had cash, we splurged, over designed the UI, ran A/B tests for features which nobody asked for, did fancy big ticket hiring, burnt money on digital marketing, all the usual suspects. On the contrary, post COVID, funding had dried out. There was a lot of stigma and paranoia associated with lending as a domain. And we had no option but to get frugal and innovative at the same time. We stripped the tech to its core, focused on just one loan product, cut down all the bloatware we had, sharpened our risk and data models like our lives depended on it, literally. By focusing on going deep into a particular problem statement rather than too wide, focusing on collecting a few A's rather than too many B's, is where all the magic happened. We eventually were able to sustainably grow 20 to 30% on a month-on-month basis and hit product market fit, which is the holy grail in case of startups. The whole idea is that constraints, they act like a lens. They force focus. Limitations, they eliminate all the non-essential clutter. And I'm sure it is easy to guess that which phase, whether it was the post-Series A splurge phase or post-COVID frugality but innovative phase, is the one which delivered more breakthroughs. Upwards is a story of focus and speed, which led to the entire breakthrough and the outlier outcome. For context, there were about 50 lending ventures which were started in the country. Less than 10 of those got any kind of exit or liquidity event. In the broader universe of fintechs, there are about 150, 200 ventures and businesses which are running. Less than 20 of those have had some kind of an exit event. Moving from bloated to brutalist is what led to this outcome. But maybe we were one-offs. We were the exception and not the norm. Maybe we were lucky. Maybe timing worked in favor of us. Maybe it was serendipity. So let's look at some more examples just to understand, appreciate, and reinforce how commonplace and day-to-day this phenomenon actually is. Let's take the case of Spanx and Sara Blakely. I'm sure many of us are aware of this story. The picture which you see on the right, her very first promotional picture when she had just launched the brand was not very different from this. She started with roughly $5,000 of her own savings. She had no plan, she had no funding. She essentially built the prototype in her apartment, cold call manufacturers, wrote her own patent, and today we all know what the outcome is. It's $1 billion brand. And just for context, the average VC funded startup would spend $1 million, $2 million easy on product development and initial go to market. The key thing is when you don't have money, you compensate for that with obsession. You can't outspend, so you outthink. Now, we've looked at two examples. One is Upwords, which is a consumer tech story, the other is Spanx. This is a consumer brand story. So maybe this phenomenon is confined to the universe of consumer businesses. Good for us, that is not the case. Let's look at another example, Zoho, the profitable SaaS giant from Chennai. We all know the numbers. The ARR would be north of $1 billion. They have not raised any external money. Most Indian SaaS startups were chasing headlines and valuations. Zoho effectively built a SaaS empire from the hinterlands of Tamil Nadu. I already mentioned they did not raise any external capital. They had limited Bay Area presence, at least in the early days. No flashy hiring, no flashy offices. What they did have was a razor sharp and morbid obsession with the product. Deep engineering, solving customers' true problem statement, and essentially profitability. Frugality in their case was not a compromise, it was a very conscious choice. By staying grounded, they built at their own pace and on their own terms. See, too much freedom is like going to an all-you-can-eat buffet, only to come back hungrier because you couldn't decide whether you wanted to have more of chaat or more of sushi. Now, we've looked at three stories here. One was Upwords, one was Spanx, the other one was Zoho. We've looked at B2C, we've looked at B2B businesses. The common underlying theme being that these were all set up by private entrepreneurs, these were private enterprises. So maybe it is when wealth creation is the primary objective, then this happens. Or this is something which only happens when capitalism is the defining principle. Let me take another very familiar story to highlight that that is also not the case, and that's also again a very good thing. Again, we are all aware of the story of Chandrayaan 3 and ISRO. Chandrayaan 3 was launched with a cost which was less than the Bollywood mega disaster Adipurush. We launched and landed it for a cost of just about 600 crores. The average Marvel movie, of which all of us, I'm sure, are fans of, is built for a budget of about $150 to $200 million easy. That's almost 3 to 4 times the budget for VFX in which we took a rover to the moon. And what we accomplished here is not some jugaad on the moon. It was a very clear mission statement to land the damn thing. As a part of the process, sure, we might have used stripped down tech, we might have used some old hardware, we might have not had any fancy orbiters, but we landed the damn thing and built national pride. Alongside, we also beat two of our most sought after geographical competitors, which is US and China, in this space race. Key thing is that focus, it almost always beats funding, and billions do not necessarily equal to brilliance. And if India can put a rover on the moon with a stripped down budget with n number of constraints, we can probably ship that MVP with a team of 3 and a broken MacBook. The whole idea is that are we ready to do it? Having looked at enough of such examples, personally, indirectly, within India and outside of India, I have been able to distill down these, so to say, principles or rules to build like you're broke into these 5 essential components. The first one, bootstrapping builds muscle. Building lean, it forces discipline. Whether you are funded or not, think like you're broke. You will be more resilient, faster, and oddly freer. Scarcity, it sharpens focus. When you can't afford to do everything, you focus only on what moves the needle. Constraints, they focus smart trade-offs and you learn fast. Mindset trumps model. B2B, B2C, SaaS, private, any 3 or 4 letter acronyms you can take. The principle still holds. Build like you're broke, it isn't about budget. It's about how you think, decide, and act under pressure. Creativity, it loves constraints. Boundaries, they force invention. From duct tape prototypes to hack together MVPs to jugaad engineering. Creativity thrives when there are limitations. Smart before scale. And this is one of the most common and brutal mistakes. Scale rewards what's already working, but it also heavily penalizes what doesn't work. When you are broke, you test before you bet big. You stay close to the customer. You earn the right to grow rather than forcing your way to growth by burning money into it. That's not a limitation. It is the most honest form of product market validation. And that's how any business should grow. Let me conclude with these final thoughts. We are all aware of Leonardo da Vinci's timeless masterpiece, The Last Supper. But what many of us may or may not know is that this was built on a faded monastery wall. This was built with an experimental fresco technique and with a stripped down budget. And while all of these challenges prevailed, which is a faded canvas, a flawed canvas, a meager budget, the impact was still timeless. Going back to the upward story, lending as a domain is constrained by default. There are lenders, regulators, risk team, compliance guys who are always breathing down their necks. But having built that business and having come out of those foxholes and trenches, I can safely say that in those hardest conditions is when the cleanest of execution happens. Constraints, they don't erase impact, they etch it deeper. We have to learn to rise against the wind. Just like airplanes, they lift off against the headwinds. We rise strongest when conditions push against us. The tighter the constraints, the deeper our clarity and the stronger our resolve. All growth will happen in spite of, not because of. The struggle within is what will become our strength. Growth will rarely come from ease, carved from pressure, hardships, pain, resilience, fear, some of our deepest insecurities. Comfort, it may feel good in the moment, but it rarely leads to greatness. As Winston Churchill has said, there is no time for ease and comfort. It is time to dare and endure. We have to find what burns within us because that's what will ignite the world outside. So don't chase freedom from constraints. Learn to build with them, channel them, and build like you're broke. Thank you.